Good morning, everybody. This is Zero Project Conference 2024, and this is the workshop on accessible transport under the European Initiative Accessible EU Hub. So welcome everybody who are present and also people online. So just to get started, because we have a small group, we were expecting something in excess of 40, but I'm not quite sure online how many are coming. So just to do an introduction, because we're a small group, I will start and we'll go this way around the room, and hopefully we can get people online to just introduce themselves. So Ger Craddock, I'm from Dublin and I head up the Centre for Excellence in Universal Design, which is the only centre funded by government in the world promoting universal design, set up in 2005. So we will explain a bit more on what the centre does in a moment, but just to introduce everybody. And to my left, my colleague, Donal.
Good morning, Donal Fitzpatrick is my name. I am the senior. Oh, my microphone.
Your microphone, yeah. There now.
We'll try that again. Good morning, Donal Fitzpatrick is my name. I am the senior ICT advisor with the Centre for Excellence in Universal Design, working alongside Ger. And I focus on a lot of policy related work in respect of the digital environment, and I also make contributions on the topic of education.
Yeah, hello. I'm the first one of this small Austrian group present here. My name is Stefan Schönfelder. I'm a member of the Task Force of Accessibility of the Federal Ministry of Climate Protection. I'm relatively new in the area of accessibility, although I'm a wheelchair user, and I'm looking forward to have a very nice discussion on accessibility in transport. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melanie Norman, and I'm here with my colleagues from the Austrian Association supporting the visually impaired and blind people. And now I will give it to you. Okay.
Okay. Hello, I'm Elmar Fürst. I'm chairman of the board of the Austrian Association supporting the blind and visually impaired. And in my original profession, I'm a professor for transport and logistics management at WU Vienna, which is Vienna University of Economics and Business Administration.
Good morning. My name is Daniela Fassel. I'm the assistant of Professor Fürst.
Hi, my name is Jessica Rivero. Yeah, I'm from ONCE Foundation, and I belong to the Department of R&D, in which we apply innovative technologies to break barriers.
Hello, good morning. My name is José Luis Borao. I'm the head of the Built Environment Accessibility Department in Fundación ONCE, Spain, and I'm working directly in the direction team of the European Accessibility Resource Center, Accessible EU, as Gerald always say, an accessibility hub that we are working for the European Commission.
Hello, my name is Marisol Villena. I am coming from Spain, from Accenture. I am working on digital accessibility, and I am coming here to learn more about this topic, which I guess includes also some additional areas like physical accessibility too, and accessibility in the transportation process. So I am very curious to know more about it.
I'm just wondering if we can get people online there, Eva, to introduce themselves. Is that possible?
Should be possible, right? The online people, can you hear me?
Just checking if the people online can introduce themselves. That would be great. And one at a time. Thank you.
Hi, attendees, you are able to enable your mics if you want to speak, to activate them.
Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
You.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
I'm Vasco from Lisbon, Portugal. I work for Cariz, the public operator in Lisbon, for bus and trams, and I'm responsible for one of the depots of the company that have bus. And I work in another depot for several years that has a scheme of transportation for disabled people door to door in Lisbon.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Anybody else there online?
Hello, we are from Tartu City Government, and we have a couple people here from transport, from mobility area, and health services. Thank you.
And sorry, where did you say you were from?
We are from Estonia, sorry. From Tartu City Government.
Very good. Thank you for that. Last call for online. Okay, 10, 9. Yes, so, oh, someone coming in there? Okay, we will make a start. If people come in, we will, I'm looking at the screen there, Cortina, that the purpose, just back to the purpose of this workshop, it is very much connected, as I said, to the European Accessibility Hub for people who are not aware of that. It is a European initiative funded by the European Commission on developing expertise across Europe to support the implementation of the European Accessibility Act. One of the key pillars is transport, which is what this workshop is about here this morning. And before I forget, there's a QR code here that if you can scan, so you can register. One of the key requirements from the European Commission is the numbers that we have, a record of the numbers that attend the various workshops over the course of, this is the second year of the funding. There are 2 further years post, so 25, 26. So, and hopefully that there will be other funding to extend this network beyond 2026. So just to explain who I am, as on the screen in front of you, as I said, I head up the Centre for Excellence in Universal Design in Ireland. And Eva, the next slide there, please. So we are the only statutory centre on universal design in the world. We were set up under legislation back in 2005. Key areas that we work on is the built environment, but also digital environments, as my colleague to my left, Donald Fitzpatrick, caters or looks specifically in the whole area of digital technologies, but also then looking at services. And what we've been very much focusing on the last number of years is looking from a systems perspective. So the image on screen is actually showing probably one of the more accessible transport systems, I would say, in Europe. We were very involved in, going back 15, 17 years, is our public tram system in Dublin. The top left is showing a very straight line platform, which means that there's no curve on the platform, which means that there's no gap between the train and the platform, which is essential if you're looking for ease of access. Also, it's level access. The other area, we worked very closely from the digital perspective on the online information system. The system is called LUIS, which is an Irish word, which is speed in English. So it's called the LUIS system in Dublin. But also then the built environment, as you can see in the lower left picture, which is looking at seating area for people where they're waiting for the tram to arrive. So we're very proud of this part of our transport. There's lots of others areas that we're still working on, but I think my colleague has been in Dublin. I think we met at a European Transport Forum in Dublin Castle, if I remember, going back a number of years ago. If that is correct, we co-presented at a European. So next slide there. So key focus of our work, and this is a quote from Victor Papanek. You may have come across him. One of the first industrial product designers that really talked about people and humans. And a key quote, he talks about the only important thing about design is how it relates to people. So a huge focus of our work is engaging with the users, be it transport, be it technology, be it in the area of education, etc. So this is one of our mantras in the centre. A fabulous book, if you ever want to read. It's called Designed for the Real World, first published in 1971. And at that time, he was seen as very much an outlier. Product designers, industrial designers were not talking about people when they were considering designs back in the 70s. So things have improved regarding what the thinking is and the approach on not only looking at transport, but other areas within both the built environment and digital environment. Next slide there, Eva. So some of the areas that we've been concentrating on is the whole area of diversity and active travel, which is a significant initiative by the Irish government, and engaging, looking at what are some of the issues, but also highlighting the reasons why people with disabilities want to get out there. They want to be active and they want to be engaging in their own community. So on the screen, some of the key points that we've raised with our own government in Ireland. It's an integral part to travel, particularly public transport. As one of our good friends would say, who's blind, this is my only way of travel is public transport. I can't use a bicycle. I can't drive a car. I can't use a moped. I have to use public transport, where for most of us, we can use some form of public transport. Automatic cars. Yeah, we can discuss different. Yeah. So active travel can be for everyone, very important. So as I said, disabled people want to get out into their own communities. we would see definitely in Ireland, but also even here in Vienna, footpaths can be used by a variety of users, but also the issues around maintenance being a huge issue. But also the technology that people with disability use, be it modified tricycles, hand cycles, etc. And again, that space to use larger pedestrian mobility devices, we would see as a significant issue, particularly in probably city centre areas, which would have been designed many decades or even centuries ago. Next slide there, Eva. So barriers to active travel. Again, some of the images on the screen here are showing where there's a car parked on the footpath, and the daughter and mother with a buggy have to go out onto the road. So again, behavior we see is a huge issue. Awareness around why you should not be parking your car on a footpath being a significant issue. So we would see not only at a national level, but at a European level, the lack of consultation around, again, the information itself not being accessible for people to actually use. Cost, again, for if you have to carry out adaptations to your own cycles or whatever vehicle you may be using, is quite expensive. Lack of suitable infrastructure for walking and cycling. And of course, the whole issue of behaviour we would see as probably one of the biggest barriers to accessible transport and use, not only in Ireland, but also internationally. Next slide there, Eva. So some of the barriers that we're encountering in Ireland, just for example, is, I'm not quite sure, definitely in quite a number other European countries, the island or floating bus stops have been rolled out as active travel initiatives in many countries, including Ireland. And the whole issue of crossing the cycle track can present clear difficulties and safety concerns for pedestrians. So we would see that Ireland, definitely the Netherlands, the UK, Canada, Australia are using these floating bus stops, and they're a significant hazard. We're working with British Columbia in Canada at the moment, where they have just won a court case where it is now being seen as discriminatory to use these floating bus stops. But also they're looking at an alternate design, because there's lots of these now being built. How do we actually retrofit, which is not ideal, but also going forward, how do we actually ensure we build a more accessible design? For example, I have two of these very close, within 100 yards where I live in Dublin. And the amount of older people who are not using public transport because they're finding these extremely dangerous to actually use. So an issue we can discuss once we stop this short presentation. So the European Disability Forum, next slide, Eva, there, talk about significant barriers, and a phrase we often use is mind the gap. Because often when it comes to trains, and even here in Vienna, there is a gap between the track or the platform and the train, but also the steps to get onto the train are quite difficult to manage. And even for people who may be using suitcases, I've seen since arriving in Vienna, people trying to get on and off with their suitcases, significant issue. So, as I said, lack of accessibility, rolling stock and train stations, limited availability of assistance in certain stations. So we're seeing more and more of unpersoned, using rather than unmanned stations. Need to notify assistance in advance. We see that as a significant barrier to independent living, where you need to give 48 hours or 24-hour notice that you're taking public transport. Again, the infrastructure around stations, getting to and from the station, the rolling stock themselves, the vehicles are, again, what we're now going to see as a significant step forward. Our services, information and ticketing under the European Accessibility Act, where ticketing systems have to be made accessible. However, the lead-in time is, we would feel, is significantly long. There is a lead time, anything up to 15 years once the Act has been passed, which is 28th of June 2025, just over a year from now. And again, back to that whole culture issue, behaviour, we would see as probably one of the biggest barriers from the social perspective. Then people understanding about accessibility, but also their behaviour, how they deal with people, but also in how they use transport themselves. Next slide. So some of the approaches that we've taken back to where we've now looked at it from a systems perspective, not only transport, but how it links for students who may be going to education facilities, people going to work, people going to hospitals. So it needs to be looked at from a systems perspective. So we've adopted this from the New South Wales government in Australia. It was very much part of my own research going back a couple of decades ago. So looking at it, a human ecological systems perspective. So we talk about the macro level, we talked about the meso and the micro. So at the macro level, we're talking about at a European national level. So key elements that need to be in place are policies, the legislation, but also then the standards, which we'll talk briefly about as part of the European Accessibility Act. Then at an institutional level, you're very much looking at the whole area of codes of practice, resources, toolkits, and of course then training and support at the micro level, which is very much at the service level. So that we have seen, we have made significant progress looking at not only the transport, but also looking from education, employment, health as part of it from a systems perspective, but also then being able to break it down into these three distinct areas at very much at the national level, at the institutional level, and then finally at the very much service at the frontline level. We can talk a bit more on that in a moment when I just finish. About 2 more slides to go here. So the whole journey approach on the next slide, Eva. This again coming from Australia, where again breaks it down very nicely. What are the key areas that needs to be considered when we talk about the whole journey approach to public transport? So just quickly reading the key titles here. So it's the pre-planning. Before you go on a journey, particularly for people with disabilities, they have to plan their journey in advance, because it's not only getting to the location, but it's also being able to be assured that they can actually get back from that location. So again, the whole journey start and end, as I already mentioned. Again, where the public station is, the transport, the bus stop, as I already mentioned, key consideration. The whole public transport service. So again, the online, and Donal can talk to you at length about using online services that he uses on a daily basis. The whole interchange. So it's not only the bus, but it's getting to the train, it's getting to the airplane, and again, vice versa, being able to reverse from, again, maritime, we would see as a significant barrier for people with disabilities, which I think is an area that needs to be seriously looked at. And again, as I already mentioned, the returning planning, having that in place. And what happens when disruption? We've just done a significant consultation in Ireland over the last number of weeks, and I was on the West Coast for a consultation just this weekend, and I was working with people who are deaf, and the huge issue they had was when a train stops, what's actually happening. No announcement is being made, so they're sitting there, or again, there's a change of platform. They have no idea that there's a change of platform being announced through the intercom system. And of course, then the whole support infrastructure, so the whole information getting to and from, but also looking at it in the broader context, the taxi service that is connected to the train station, etc. And one of the very good initiatives on the next slide is that has been signed by a number of key organizations at European level. Is called the Lecco Declaration. People may not have heard of this. Lecco is a city in Italy, and the AAATE conference, which is the Association for the Advancement of Assistive Technology in Europe, hosted a conference there in 2021. And a key part of that was looking at the whole area of transport, and it was connected to a European project called TRIPS that people may be familiar with. And part of that, they came up with a manifesto or key principles that need to be considered at a European level on ensuring transport is accessible for the widest range of users. So just quickly, ones that I've highlighted without going into the 8 in detail: accessibility and assistive technology to drive innovation in the transport sector. So again, the reason for highlighting that is we are looking for what are kind of key recommendations of coming out of this workshop that we can present from the European Accessibility Hub perspective, but also to the European Commission and also back to our own countries. What are some key recommendations around how can we improve transport going forward? And again, good practices should be shared. So that's the reason for this workshop here today. And the whole area of technology transfer in the field of accessible transportation. So a significant document that has also been signed by the UITP, United Transport Forum, which is a significant organization, association right across Europe, but also internationally, and also by ENIL, which is the European Network of Independent Living Movement, which are for people with, by people and for people with disabilities. So on the next slide is an example of some of the work that we've engaged with our own National Transport Authority and what is called an audit tool on universal design audit tool for roads and streets. So we worked very closely with end users as part of designing this toolkit, which is now being used extensively right across the country by our local authorities on looking at how to make particularly the roads and streets, but also the intersection between transport and the built environment as part of their work. So again, this is freely available on our website as a very positive step that, and again, engage with significant number of disability organisations across Ireland on developing the above tool. And again, on the next slide is just to outline some of the legislation requirements for transport providers. There was talk yesterday, I suppose, in general about some of the legislative requirements in general, but these specifically how they relate to transport, and also then looking at one or two examples, I think, of good practice from my own perspective from Ireland. So the UN Convention, I think, is the overarching principle out there, and particularly Article 9 on accessibility. We would also talk about Article 4, which is on universal design, which puts the onus on governments to ensure that better design of product services, but also in the development of standards and monitoring mechanisms as part of their national requirements or statutory roles. The Web Accessibility Directive, we see that as very important because, again, it is looking at not only the initiative around the directive itself, but also each country has to have a monitoring mechanism. So unless you actually measure, you're not going to actually see is there progress or no progress being made. So we see that as a significant positive step at a European level. Again, people may not be aware that there's European directives on public procurement and again, requirements on products and services which directly link to transport. People have heard about the European Accessibility Act, which has now been transposed into national legislation across the 27 countries in Europe. And now the next stage, the big push is, one, the standards to underpin this, but also then how to actually implement this significant act over the next, I suppose, 5 to 10 years. I would be projecting being the effort required. From an Irish perspective, one of the statutory instruments that we've built into legislation is called the Code of Practice on Accessibility of Public Services and Information. And a key part of that is the statutory role of public transport providers on ensuring that their services and information are accessible. And again, part of our role, the centre, is actually to carry out the monitoring to ensure that they are. And that's ongoing work, not straightforward, as you can imagine. Also in Ireland, we have the Equal Status Acts, which is anti-discrimination legislation that people with disabilities can take legal action against transport providers on not providing accessible transport services or information. And next, there is accessibility and usability of the built environment. This is one of the new standards that has been developed and is now in the process of being harmonized. And by harmonized means that it will be adopted right across Europe. 17210, which we're involved in the revision of this European standard. Also, an important one that we led out on that was just published in 2021 is the Customer Communication for Passenger Transport Services, a universal design approach. And again, we see critical on it's getting information that it's accessible and usable being very important. And as I already mentioned, the monitoring we see as critical, unless, as Peter Drucker, a famous management guru from the States, if you can't improve what you don't measure. So unless you measure this, you're not going to see are you improving or not improving. So that is one of the key roles that we have in the work that we actually do. So my last slide, you'd be glad to hear. These are some of the recommendations that we can talk about, but I might just leave that slide for the moment because we have a couple of new people who've come to the room. And Sasha, I'm delighted you have joined us here this morning. I emailed Sasha early this morning, realizing that the US Access Board in particular have done a huge amount of work in the whole area of transport. And we had a conference call only a couple of weeks ago looking at a significant conference in Dublin, an international conference in Dublin in April on transport, the TRA, Transport Research Arena where there's over 4,000 delegates attending, specifically looking at transport. We're engaging to ensure that there's more accessibility built into the conference, and that's why we've been talking to Sachin and his team that have just joined us here. So I would like just to, if you would like to say a few words, Sachin, just on your work on accessible transport in the States, and thank you very much for taking my invitation very early this morning.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to be part of this important conversation. And in the U.S., we've been working on accessible transportation for ever since ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, has been passed. In the initial stages, we have rolled out regulations under the ADA for the buses, trains, passenger vessels. Since then, there has been revisions to those various components. Buses in particular, the U.S. Access Board, we finalized our revised regulations in 2017. We are in the process of updating standards for the rails, which we hope to have published either end of this year, early next year, most likely looking next year right now. Passenger vessels, so your ferries and cruise ships, all those different vessels, that's the one I believe we are very behind in when it comes to accessibility. We don't have too much in that space right now. So that is still in the works, and we don't have a timeline on when that's going to be revised. Last summer, we updated our standards on what we call the Public Rights of Way Accessibility Guidelines, which touches on some of the, like, for example, the bus stops, the access to transportation areas. So that is officially finalized and published. It's on our website. So that has made a significant difference. And when Department of Transportation adopts it, it will be enforceable. So that's in the process of going through the enforcement mechanism within our regulatory process. So we are working on different things. Oh, one more thing I want to mention is accessibility of electric vehicle charging stations. That's another regulation we're working on. We did publish a technical assistance document summer of 2022, which is available on our website as well. We're doing our regulations, standards on the EV charging stations, accessibility of EV charging stations right now, hopefully to be published by the fall of this year. So that's in a nutshell what we are focused on. We still have a long ways to go. Even though some of these standards have been published, the revision is very necessary to kind of bring it up to date with changes that has happened.
Very good. Thank you very much, Sachin. Appreciate that. One of the things we have used your electric charging infrastructure guidance, and literally in 2 weeks' time, Ireland will be publishing their own guidance, but very heavily based on your work. So thank you for that. So sorry, speaker back on, was looking at the macro, meso, and micro. So at the macro level, if we just concentrate on that first, I don't know if people have ever used Edward de Bono's Thinking Six Hats. He was a significant thinker on how to do lateral and creative thinking, work that I've been involved in for over 30 years. So one of his techniques is called a PMI, positive minus interesting. So the reason he started with a P, positive, was that if you start with the negative, you never get people out of negative. They stay there. So what I'd like you to think about, and then we can do a tour de table just on some of the positive elements that you would have seen. I have one or two on the screen here that I see is very positive, that we can either adopt as part of recommendations coming from this workshop, but just on your own experience, looking at it at the macro level. So macro level, looking at European or America, as we have America here in the room with us today, but also then at a national level in your own country. Is there good examples of what you've seen as very good accessibility? So give you 2 minutes to think about that and one or two examples, and we'll do a quick tour de table around the room if people are happy with that approach. It's called a PMI. So he put everything down into 3-letter acronyms. So CAF is consider all factors, and he's a group of these that you can put together to run a more, I suppose, inclusive workshop. If we didn't have all these tables hindering us from engaging. So I'll give you 2 minutes just to think on that, and then we'll ask people if people are okay with that approach. Silence is positive. Okay. One minute left. Thirty seconds. And just for online people, you may want to put your comment into the chat function online, and Eva can monitor that if that's okay with online. So 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Very good. So I'm going to be very cheeky and start. So I will, sorry about this one, Sasha, I'm taking your one already. So we've worked very closely with our own transport department, and as I said, next week or the week after, we're launching universal design guidelines for electric charging infrastructure in Ireland. So I think a very positive one, but also the one that we're very proud of that I presented there is the walkability audit tool, which has now been adopted at a national level, but also been rolled out through all the municipalities in Ireland. So sorry about that, but I'm chair, so I have certain privileges which I have now exercised. Now I'm going to go this direction here. Donal.
Is that on?
Yes.
I'll give you my one from a national perspective is that several years ago we introduced into Ireland the notion of completely free travel on public transport, not only for people with some disabilities but also for a companion, and that's made it possible for people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to travel to do so very, very affordably and very well, and that has worked very well. Across from a European perspective, I would say the implementation of the European Disability Card could have some very, very positive implications.
Thanks, Donald. Stefan?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the very informative introduction into the challenges of accessibility in especially public transport. Yeah, let me start with some positive things about transport accessibility in Austria, but also in other countries of the European Union. I think the accessibility of the rail system has especially improved over the last years, not the least by the measures of the European Union in terms of interoperability and so on. Clearly, there are still gaps in rural areas, which makes it difficult to travel if you are in a wheelchair or if you're blind or whatever. But I think in rail services, I think we have. If you ask me how many steps have you gone already in the rail system, I would say 7 out of 10. Yeah, which I think is good. And but let me give you other examples where I find that there has been positive improvements. I think positive improvements have been also found in big cities and their transport systems. I think this is true for underground, for metros, not in all big cities, but in most of them. And I think Vienna is a very good example of how we can, in which direction we can go. Let me give me a last thing on the positive side. I think we are actually shifting from understanding accessibility not only from a wheelchair accessible side or having ramps somewhere or assistance somewhere. I think we are getting now into the phase where we are understanding accessibility in transportation from a more comprehensive side. So we are having a look at the cognitive impairments. We're having a look at the an easy understanding of guidance and navigation. I think that is a very positive side. Finally, let me add to the challenges we have got in transportation in general. I think most of the time we are going to talk about public transportation, but I think there are some fields which we need to have a look at. One field is what we call the new mobility services, like car sharing, ride pooling, ride sharing, and so on. And I think accessibility in this field hasn't looked at all over the last 10 years. If you want to, if you're a wheelchair user and you want to try to get a car sharing car in Vienna, it's absolutely impossible to get a car where you have got what is it? A hand control and so on and so on. So the new mobility services are an area where we haven't had to look at, especially over the last decades. And the last one, and I think this was on one of your slides as well, rural areas and the accessibility in transportation is really a mess. This belongs, or this touches rail services and the unmanned or unpersoned stations in rural areas. But this also touches, for example, bus services. Nowadays, I'm able to find a regional bus in the rural areas which are wheelchair accessible, but there's only one space for one wheelchair. So what should I do if I want to go with my friend who's also in the wheelchair? Yeah, and this is really, really difficult. So rural areas is a particular field where we should have a look at more in the next decades to come. Thank you very much.
Yes, Stefan. Over to you.
Okay, the ladies want me to step in. Yes, I do. Well, I have two examples I would like to mention. The first is the good example of Vienna International Airport. When the most recent terminal there was opened, it was a catastrophe in terms of accessibility. And the good thing about all this is that management noticed that and made strong commitments into the right direction. They established at the beginning 5 different working groups to bring the thing forward. And there have much improvements have been made, and also lots of funds have been invested. And now we can say that the cooperation of the Disabled People's Organization with the airport management is a benchmark in the positive sense. There is now a committee on accessibility. Many people belong to this committee, specialists from the accessibility side, including what Stefan mentioned, cognitive disabilities, psychological disabilities, of course, all kinds of sensual disabilities and physical disabilities. So the broad spectrum is addressed and included. And whenever they start new projects, they call us, and we sit together and discuss how we can establish a thing which is in the end accessible, and that is right from scratch, which is not the standard, of course. Mostly we are called when everything is done already, and that is the crucial thing about all this. The experts of accessibility are included too late, at a too late stage of projects, where only small things can be changed, but not basics can be changed. And that is the problem about this. But the positive example here is that they address the people right from scratch. So as soon as they think about new projects, they call us and include us. And that is what I think is really a benchmark and should be a role model for other airports and other settings in general in the transport environment. The second positive example is the last, and I have to stress this is only the last one because the other ones went not so well. The last procurement of new long distance trains of Austrian Federal Railways, where there has also been some sort of inclusion, and in the new projects there is an established group for inclusive design at the Austrian Disability Council, and which is the umbrella organization actually for all disabled people organizations in the country. And here we have seen really good progress, as for instance the gap and the height difference between the platform and the train has been reduced to an absolute minimum. There are vehicle side entering aids and everything which is needed there, and also the location of the wheelchair seats has been discussed with us, because when we have seen this for the first time, it was like in former times when wheelchair users had to be transported in the mail carriage. Yeah, and so what?
Bicycle.
Cargo in the cargo or bicycle area. Yes. So there have been some improvements made, and when the trains now they are delivered during during next month, and they will particularly run on routes between Germany and Italy. So this has been mostly a good thing. So to name two positive examples. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that. Yes, you introduce yourself as
Yeah.
well, please.
I'm Victor Calisi. I'm former commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and former board member of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York City, which runs the region. I'm wearing a lot of different hats, but I've seen some really positive things while I was riding here on the system, as everything was fully accessible on the U1 line. The rail system's been fully accessible. So those things are absolutely great. And one of the things that you do well in Europe is street to platform, meaning that you go from the street directly to the platform. In the United States of America, we have rules that every area has to be accessible. So we have to go street to mezzanine, so we get that experience, and then mezzanine to platform, and that adds more elevators and breaking down. Also, some of the good things I've seen here is elevator redundancy, building more than one elevator, so less points of failure. That's been great. Other things that I worked directly on when I was working for the city is our accessible citywide ferry. That we added all accessibility features from wayfinding to bathrooms inside ferries, as well as captioning on all boards. And then one other thing that's really important for transportation is ride sharing, making sure ride sharing companies are doing their job to make things accessible. We put one simple rule in place where only vehicle that you can put on the street has to be a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and which led to thousands of wheelchair accessible vehicles around the city, as well as comparable wait times for non-disabled people in ride-sharing apps. That is something that certainly needs to be addressed, especially for where those transit deserts are, wherever, if you're in a rural area or not, and adding that accessible vehicles in that really helps people, especially as we think of aging population. By the year 2020, 2030, every baby boomer will be over the age of 65. Those are some interesting things that are happening. I do agree with ways to find ride-sharing cars, right? That you can get a car on the street. Those are certain things, and also our public bicycle programs and how they need to be accessible for people with visual disabilities, and tandem bikes and hand cycles for those who are in wheelchairs, as well as those who are aging with tricycles. Thank you.
Very good. Great to see you, Victor. Thank you for that. Yes, I will definitely be using that phrase, transit deserts. Nice phrase. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Well, from Fundación ONCE in Spain, we have been working in transport for several years. So working directly with public administrations that manage all the transport systems in Spain, so at national level, but also at local level. For example, we have been working with Metro de Madrid as well, as you know. I'm sure that Victor will say that that New York's metro is the most accessible in the world. No? Okay.
No, it's not.
I'd say that Madrid Metro is the most accessible in the world. I think so. And that's not because I'm from Madrid, but I think it's a really good example of an accessible network. It's a really ancient metro network, but I think it's a good example. We have been working with TMB, is the public entity that manages the public transportation in Barcelona. We have been working with them, pushing different programs on accessibility, and innovation, and different innovation programs on accessibility. But what we are really, from some few years ago, we're working directly with companies that they manufacture the different, for example, the trains. We have a great cooperation agreement with Alstom, and we're really so proud with it because we think they have a really important role in the accessibility of the transportation, public transportation net, because if they don't they don't design their own, for example, the trains in this case, it's difficult to have the global accessibility. I know it's important, the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, all the information, all the applications that are related to transport, but if the physical well, the trains, the cars, the planes are not accessible. It's difficult to have a global accessible chain in the transport. So we are really proud in this sense by working on these big companies, because Alstom is one of these companies. We are now trying to work with Airbus. I think it's the air transportation is quite difficult to move on accessibility, but we are trying to, and we are also working. And I want to mention that we are working in different projects on R&D and I. For example, there's access robots that we are applying it to the transport environment, and maybe Jessica, you could also explain much better than me this project.
Well, we find that there is a problem in the train station, for example, or in the airplanes, in which you arrive to the station, and then you feel in some cases alone. You don't know how to go from one place, from the enter to the gate, for example. It's true that the airport normally gives you the opportunity to have one person or a service that help you or support you in the transit, but there are few people for that, and imagine that there are a lot of people with disability, or a lot of people that need it, so it's impossible to give support to all the people. So we decided to create a support, a help for that kind of service, and then we provide robotic platforms to these kind of services. So we have a robot that you can ask for guidance from one point to another in the train station or bus station or whatever, and then you can have this help in the movement. And it's not only for going from the entrance to the gate. Imagine you want to go to the water close. You need a help to go there, and sometimes this kind of service say no, we go from here to here are the end point and the start point, but I don't accompany you in all the transit. So with this, the idea is you can have this kind of help in all this time. So we are trying to give this kind of support, or in a station in which you don't have this service. I'm thinking in a small town or rural station in which you don't have this kind of service that are normally in very big cities. Train station, for example. So there are a lot of rural stations in which you don't have this support, and the people that live in rural village or cities cannot use the public transport. So this can give this autonomous to people with disability. It's like, well, I have some information here. It's like the supermarket. Yeah, it's like some like this one, and has a tablet. Because we study with different different profiles what kind of interaction we need. And for example, for people with cognitive disability, it's very difficult to interact with a human robot. So we give this tablet, and then appear pictograms, and for example, for hard of hearing disability has a sign languages, and then it's like a like this supermarket thing in which you put the pack. Yeah, I can give you some. It use the elevators. Yeah, use the elevators. It's ready. We have another project that is Pulse, that in which we put some kind of system information in the elevators in which you can control it by your mobile phone. So the idea is that this robot is connected to Pulse, and then you can control all the system. Thank you.
If
Yeah. Yeah, the idea is that you can control the robot by an application or by the own robot. So because there are people that doesn't want to use the mobile phone. So the idea is that you are at your home and say, I want to go from Vienna to the Vienna airport, or I'm in Vienna and I want to take the plane that go to Madrid. So you can plan your trip, and then you go there and the robot is waiting for you, and then you can control it as a mirror with the robot, and then you can follow the robot, or you can put your hand in the robot and then the robot guide you. So in function of the type of profile, you have this app or you have the application inside the tablet.
So this robot, is that in every location that's available right now, or and also what's the perception for the users? How are they perceiving the blind population especially?
The feedback that we have obtained from user is very, very good. At the beginning, we are a little scared because it's true that the interaction with robot is to some people is something strange, but the thing that when the people arrive and look that it's not like a bad robot, imagine, then they feel comfortable with it. It's like a support, and then the interaction is very good. And for example, for blind people that sometimes they feel some scared about the robot, they feel very, very comfortable with it. They feel safety, and that's very important because in some previous projects, some profiles say that they don't want to use robot because they don't feel safety. But with this one, they say that yes, and then for us it's very, very important. And the only profile that feel some problem, but we have solved it with next interaction, was the elderly people. But after the first use, they want to use it more. So we have tried to test with all the profiles. Now, for example, we are doing tests this week in a bus station, because they want to use it in the train station, in the bus station in Spain, and the feeling is being very, very good. So let's see.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And would you like to introduce yourself and then?
Of course. I'm Rola Jaradat. I'm the Accessibility and Universal Design from Jordan, from the Higher Councils for the Rights of Persons with Disability. I would like to talk about, let's say, good experience in Jordan about transportation. As maybe you know or you don't know, in Jordan we don't have underground metro, or we only have buses. So from 2020 we started to work with the Amman municipality to have this transportation system as accessible in Amman, and we till now we let's say we are pleased for the results that we have gained till now, where the buses and the infrastructure is accessible for the persons with disabilities, and the buses also. And for that, since the experience was we got very good results from that, we started to also to spread this experience throughout the other cities. But this needs from us revised to go through revision of legislations. So we are in the process now of revision the legislation, so as the other buses in the other cities and to be accessible, as well as the taxi. As we know, the all transportation, public transportation is now started to become accessible, but unfortunately the taxis still are not yet, even the, let's say, not all of the tourist bus. So we are now going through this procedure, but we are proud of the result that we had reached in the accessible transportation till now in Jordan, and I'm pleased that I have also could go through the hybrid guidelines that we will go through, because Amman also is accepting a lot of buses and hybrid buses, so that we can also make sure that we are ongoing with the track. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And last here in the present, to yourself.
Okay, one of the things that I would like to mention has been already covered, but I would like to echo that, which is a European Disability Card, right? Access to democratize, right? The access to the mobility by providing discounts or free access to the people to move around Europe. And the second thing that I would like to mention as a user in Madrid, I have seen that accessing to the bus stop via Navilens, right, allows the people who are blind users to be able to know where to go to wait for the bus. So I think that those are very good improvements that I have seen that are not only I have seen spreading right around the different cities across the region.
Thank you for that. Eva, just checking if there's any comments online, or if anyone online wants to speak on good practices. And some of the colleagues present also covered some of the challenges. So covered probably the P and the M in their speak. But I was very generous. I decided I would not call them up on this occasion because they were in flow. So you have a P and possibly an M for minus. If you want to speak now or put into the chat to Eva there. Online presence now. We'll go. If there's any comments, please put into the chat or raise your hand so we can bring you into the conversation. So just moving on, I'm again conscious of the time. Thanks for the inputs. I think some very useful information there. What I'm going to do is, as again, privilege of being chair, I'm going to call up my last slide because I think we covered a number of points in the last slide there, Eva, on recommendations, and we can add and subtract regarding your comments, because I think we've covered quite a number there. I'll just read them out, and if you people can see, I'll read them out as I have them here in front of me as well. So recommendations, and which I think links to several comments from people present. So taking a universal design approach to create an integrated, inclusive customer transport system, the whole journey approach. So recommending resources are provided for disabled people to be directly involved in the standardization process. And again, implementing fully the UNCRPD and the LECO declaration. So that was kind of, again, back to that whole journey approach that we talked about again, taking a universal, inclusive, design for all approach on creating an integrated, inclusive customer transport system, which very much links to the UNCRPD, but also to the LECO declaration that I mentioned earlier on. I'll go through them and people can then come back, flag to make comments. Updating the built environment requirements under the European Accessibility Act from optional to a requirement by EU countries. So I think that has been a significant gap in the European Accessibility Act that the built environment was not seen as a requirement by European countries. And I think both Stefan and Victor talked about the transit deserts, rural transport, air and maritime travel are areas that need considerable attention with regards to accessibility. So I think a big gap, the huge focus on urban transport. We see air being a significant issue, but also maritime, as Sasha mentioned, they're working on that. Also, Victor Khaleesi from New York, I think it'd be very interesting to see their new guidance around ferries that they've worked on around New York City. Implementing the EU disability card and parking card. We heard about that yesterday. I think it's a huge initiative by the European Commission to move that agenda. I think the key thing will now be implementing what are the assessment criteria that will be agreed across Europe. I think that's going to be a considerable piece of work, because I know the criteria in Ireland is very much based on the medical model approach, which we definitely need to update and move beyond that. So the whole implementation and how that's going to come about, I think that's going to be a considerable piece of work over the next 2 to 3 years. They haven't set a date from what I can gather on the transposition of that directive. We'll wait and see the dates around that. Ensuring ongoing funding to support capacity building as well as knowledge sharing across the 27 EU countries through the EU Accessible Hub initiative. So I think not only funding short term, but I think long term, we definitely need an accessibility network across Europe that needs to be, I think, very similar. And it was great to have Sasha here this morning for a time to talk about the US Access Board. I think we need an equivalent in Europe where we're all connected, all following the same standards, the same approach across our 27 European countries. And then finally, greater collaboration and funding available to ensure better integration of the needs and concerns of disabled people and older people. We're constantly seeing these being two parallel streams, disabled people and older people, rather that they need to be actually co-joined and linked together, because a lot of the concerns, needs of disabled and older people are very similar. And we see definitely at a national level where they're very much separate. And I think it's creating these silos makes it very difficult to get integrated services or systems in place. So there were kind of my thoughts on coming here today, which I think several link to the conversations we have had already. So I like the work ONCE there, particularly bringing the whole new technology about robotics as part of recommendation, because we are seeing right across, and I think back to the rural concerns Stefan mentioned, where you're seeing all these unmanned stations now, where a robot being there to support and whatever, provide information updates, that I think would be a huge initiative to actually implement over the next couple of years. So on that note, back open to the floor for your thoughts, and great, hands up already.
There's one thing I would like to mention in this room, because it might be interesting for some of you. The European Platform of Transport Sciences, which is an umbrella organization of several European transport research associations, has established and will conduct for the first time ever a summer school at the beginning of July, which is open for academic students of all levels, so bachelor, master's, doctoral degree, whatever. And this will be on inclusive, accessible, and barrier-free public transport. It will take place at the University of Maribor, who is a co-organizer. My university and my organization is the second organizer, and the European Platform for Transport Sciences is, so to say, the umbrella organization for this. If you want to have more information, you can approach me, or you simply go to epts.eu, and there is the information on the website. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So the website
EPTS.
Say that one more time.
EPTS.eu, like European Union.
EPDS.
T transport.
T for transport.
European Platform for Transport Sciences.
Sciences.eu. Excellent. Yeah, I think that would be, yeah. And what university, where it's being held?
Maribor, Slovenia.
Slovenia. I think that would be an important one to include in the.
There will be staff experience opportunities. We will organize a trip to Graz, from Maribor to Graz, and then people will sit in wheelchairs or being blindfolded, etc.
Very good. And some nice refreshments as well, yes? Yeah.
I forgot one thing to say. This is funded by Erasmus Plus, and also the students can get funds they can apply. And there are 3 ECTS points credited, and this can of course be then recognized at the home university if they agree.
Great. I think that's very important. I think that links very closely to the work of the EU Accessible Hub on building capacity, and particularly a huge area that the Accessible Hub is looking at is education and students. How do we inform and provide knowledge to the next generation of engineers, architects, planners? So I think that would be, and it's in person only. Yeah, in person only. Very good. Thank you for that. So back to, because Jose will be asking me what are the key recommendations coming out of this workshop. So we have at least a beginnings here. I think, as I mentioned, bringing the innovation element that was mentioned by Anse, I think as part of the recommendation would be important. But anything else there, people, it's now 11:30. We'll give this about 10 more minutes, if that's okay, Jose, or do we have to keep, will the European Commission be angry with us if we go less than 2 hours? Okay. Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, we started early. I was in here at 9:30. Yeah. Very good. Absolutely. So, thoughts on this? On just, I think there are some, as I mentioned already, I think direct links. I think very important. I think this disability card, I think, will be a very important. And it is a very important initiative. And if I was clear on what I heard last night from the Commission, it has now gone through the council stage, has been agreed in the last couple of days. So I'm not quite sure what's left to actually propose as a new directive on the disability card. People clear on that from last night? You're nodding there, Stefan. So
it was said that. Yeah, it was said that the agreement is now through.
Yeah.
Between the European Parliament and the Council, and I'm actually not sure what's the next step as you actually.
Yeah.
So I think the next step is that the government heads have to have this final say about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know when the next summit will be of all the prime ministers and so on. So it can take another few weeks.
Yeah. Very good.
But you were saying that now it's the challenge to have a universal assessment of the disability. I think this is actually not included in this guideline because the governments were very hesitating to have this assessment, European assessment of the disability.
Yeah.
They want to cut it out of the guideline. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that will happen, but it would be great. I mean, because the assessment of the disability status is so diverse and so different in all the countries.
And very contentious.
But unfortunately, this is cut out of the guideline. Although I think the disability organizations, they wanted to have it, yeah. But I'm not sure if this will happen. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Stefan.
Last word on this, because the assessment of the disability status is, of course, linked to social transfers in the different countries. And this has to do with money and with the social budget.
Yeah.
And I think this is not covered by the guideline. It's just the European Disability Card with the status disabled or not disabled, but not the whatever percentage or so on will not be touched by this guidelines in the different countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Stefan, for that. So on the last round, anything addition or that we take away from what is on the screen there at the moment as some of the recommendations coming from this group? I think very important to lead in on the document. I think we have very good examples because I think definitely coming from a government agency, we constantly just get the negative. That's why I started this conversation with the positives. I think very important in the short document that we outline some of the initiatives that are working, and then leading in where we need to see the next steps on moving accessible transport from not only from a European perspective, but also from a national perspective. So that was kind of my thinking about in putting this workshop together, that we start with positive and then what are the next steps to improve our transport infrastructure and everything else that goes with it. And I think the positive moves, moving from just talking about physical disability, now looking at it in a broader sphere, be it cognitive, sensory, etc. I think has been a gradual change that definitely we're seeing, definitely at a national level, but also at a European level. But when we were presenting the European Accessibility Act to our government officials this time last year, Donal and myself, the first question that was asked, what's happening about the built environment? And our government colleagues from the department we report to said the next step is going to be requirements around the built environment. So there was stunned silence from the government officials, because where we see it as critical, as in if you're going to have ticketing machines, etc., and there are steps to get to the ticketing machine, it does not make sense on not including the built environment as part of the European Accessibility Act or leaving it as an optional. So that's why that one is on screen. And we definitely talked about the rural transport, but Anse there talked about the air And also the maritime, I think, has definitely not been tackled to the same extent as we've seen urban transport. So, Donal.
You on there? Yeah.
Yes.
Great, thanks. So one thing that strikes me as a recommendation that we haven't considered is we are moving into an era really of what I'm going to call smart cities. There's lots of data out there. There are lots of sensors, there are lots of cameras, there's lots of data available, both provided by official organizations such as government departments, municipalities, but equally crowdsourced data from the apps that people are actually using. And we can see evidence of this by using mainstream wayfinding applications, mapping data that'll say there's a lot of traffic on this road. Do you want to take an alternative route, etc. I think a really important recommendation out of this is data and use of data in a way that's actually interoperable. So if we take as an example something like the European Disability Card, if I'm in Dublin and I have an app on my phone that tells me where the nearest accessible bathroom is, or the nearest parking space for cars driven by disabled people is, when I go to Vienna, I don't want to have to download the app for Vienna. I want to keep using the app that I've been using and just get the data from Vienna. So I think that interoperability across regions, across Europe, across municipalities is going to be hugely important, because what it does is it opens up the capability of building apps on top of that particular data to satisfy different use cases that we can't actually consider because we don't know what they are right now. But if the data is out there, we can leverage that data in very, very different ways to really improve the wayfinding experience. Whether it's, as a blind person, some crowdsourced information that says, don't go along this street today, there is construction on this street. It could be something as simple as that, or, as I said, the example of using the same app across Europe to find an accessible car parking space. So that data interoperability, that data availability, and using data standards, using interoperability standards to make sure that the data is actually available, but also includes the necessary accessibility metadata, which will then give us the extra information that we might possibly need. So I'd be interested, if it's okay with you, Ger, I'd be interested just on people's thoughts around the room on that.
Very good point, Donal. Yeah. And just as people are thinking about that, I think Stefan and Victor brought up the whole thing on new mobility, which is not in the recommendations there, such as car sharing, ride sharing, etc., that I think needs to be incorporated there. That, well, these services are now out there, but have not considered accessibility, as you pointed out, Stefan. You can't get a hand control car if you're looking to rent for an hour or 2 hours a car for the afternoon, etc. So I think that's missing from what's on the screen there. So
can I add on this maybe?
Yeah.
Another field where we have got difficulties in Austria is the area of taxis and occasional transport. I don't know if that is the same in other countries as well. If we need to find an accessible taxi in Vienna or in other places, it's really difficult. Is it the same in Dublin, for example?
Yes. Yeah, very much the same. Yeah. The interesting what's happened in New York, as Victor pointed out there, that any of the, what did he call them, the new ride sharing, that a requirement now is that they be wheelchair accessible. Okay. So I think, yeah, I think an important, huge issue for lots of my staff who are wheelchair users. Getting an accessible taxi is, yeah, huge difficulty.
So, sorry, it's the same also in Madrid. In Madrid, it's quite difficult, and now we have a problem because with the electrical vehicles, because of the batteries, they are big, so large. They have a great dimension, so it's quite difficult to adapt.
Huge issue.
A lot of models of taxis that they were used to be accessible, but right now we have really a lot of problems in this sense. Okay.
Well, I would like to mention, I don't want to give any promotion to any specific application, but there's an application called Cabify. Okay, it's extremely accessible, at least the version that we have been using. And also it has some accommodation adjustment that you can make. So for example, if you're blind, if you're deaf, then there is additional accommodation that you can receive. So the person can go out of the car and pick you up from where you are waiting, right? So then, I mean, probably it's not accessible for all the different areas or potential use cases that we may have, because there is a lot in accessibility, right? But in this case, based on my experience, this application has been at least having a very good reputation in the community because of those features that I have just mentioned.
What's the name of it?
Cabify. I'm not sure if it's available across Europe.
Available in every country?
I don't know. Cabify, are you familiar?
In Spain, it's available, but I don't know if what countries. It's like Uber. It's like another kind of platform of vehicles that you can. Yeah.
Very good. And
well, I would like to add, to propose to add two things to our list of recommendations. The first is a demand for maybe even an legal obligation for early stage inclusion of people with disabilities in plannings. So at least the national boards or some competent bodies should be involved in infrastructure planning, in procurement of new vehicles and so forth. So that would ensure that at least at an early stage of such processes, the requirements of people with disabilities are respected, or at least raised.
Yeah, very good.
The second is we are having progress with the European Disability Card, but of course, the crucial thing about all this is whether it is respected by the transport companies.
Yeah.
For instance, if you are entitled to have an accompanying person as an assistant with you, and they do not respect this, so then you have to buy a second ticket. And that is, of course, a problem.
Yeah.
We have this problem in Austria only in one direction, because Austrian Railways mostly accepts foreign disability cards, but vice versa, it's not the case. So if I go to Germany or to other countries, I have to pay for my assistance, right? And this is then not free. And maybe a last thing, we have seen enormous progress in urban transport and other parts of transport, of course, based on the new legislations like the TSI-PRM or the European Accessibility Act or whatever legal acts are out there. But the problem is, so we have now, let's say, accessible train stations, accessible vehicles, and so on. But the problem is, whenever there is a disruption, the toilet is closed because it broke down. The lift, the elevators are closed because there is a breakdown, and so on. And there is no replacement service and no obligation that this is fixed in a certain period of time, or that there is some other assistance has to be provided, and you are completely lost in terms of disruptions. I was to Munich, then snow was falling, which is obviously a surprise to them, and the whole railway system broke down. We were completely lost. I was happy that my wife was with me, because otherwise I would have not known what to do. Yeah. There was no information for nobody, but maybe then on screen, or if you or in parts of the railway stations they made announcements, in other parts they did not. So it was really a problem, and we need to have some rules for such disruptions and when there are breakdowns and so on. So when the things are not going as they should, we need to have some let's say some rescue plans or whatever, to help those who really need it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think very good point. And I think a key phrase by Victor there, redundancy. So that there are other means other than just the one. He was impressed with our elevators. Definitely, I see that here in Vienna. I'm not sure about Dublin having 2 elevators, because we constantly see every morning as I take public transport, the following elevators are broken, please. I'm not sure what people do. Well, I know what people do. They have to go to the next station, and then come back to come off on the other platform. That's if the lift is working on the other platform. So to finish, just people need to do the QR code that is there in front. And oh, there's a question. Great.
So the question from online, if you want, you can unmute yourself and speak. She was raising her hand, so maybe she has a question. Yeah.
Just on, yeah, so the QR code is here in the room if people can actually register. That's an important part of our requirements as part of the EU Accessible Hub. And as we're waiting, is there a question coming in?
She's unmuted, but we can't hear her.
Okay.
No.
And if you want to further contact details for myself, Eva, if you bring up the last slide there. Also the website where Walkability Audit Tool is freely available. If people want to access that, is universaldesign.ie, which is freely available for you to use, just to reference. But on that note, we'd like to thank everybody, and particularly participation, small group. But I go on quality rather than quantity. So I think the conversation here has been of a high level. So appreciate your participation, and we'll talk to Jose on the next step on bringing recommendations together, and we definitely will share that with everybody who's been here with us today. So on that note, we will close this session, and thank you once again. Well done. Eva's putting, and there is the QR code, folks. If you take a photo of that, just to register, that would be great. Absolutely. Yeah. Human interface, very important.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you yourselves. Yeah. And the other thing there is that TRA conference in Dublin. It's I'm not quite sure if any of you are traveling to Dublin for the transport. Okay.
Some years ago, yeah.
Okay.
And at that time, inclusive transport was not an answer.
Wasn't, yeah.
Very happy and depicted that I cannot be there. Will there be a session of or for accessibility insurance? It's one of the main topics. How is it? Yeah. Is it this time? You should go there. No. I reviewed some papers, but I cannot go. I was not aware that the inclusive transport is one of the topics, otherwise I would have made it possible. But that's too late.
Too late.
But I will scan the program and then get in touch with all the people who are important.
Very good. But also to inform them about the EU Accessible Hub as well, Elmar, to kind of say, here's a network that people can link into, because
I think that's very important.
Yeah, because I had to look at a lot of researchers coming from universities, and I'm not quite sure how well up they are on accessibility, to be honest.
I've been in touch with them. So
have you?
I need to do this.
Very good. Yeah, so we met in Dublin.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
The European.
I wanted to contact you that time already, but now it's
official.
Yeah, that's good.
Very good. And Donald here is my colleague.
Hello. Hello. Give you my business card as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So you said that public transport is free for people with disabilities in Dublin. Is this only for Irish citizens or other also for people?
Great question. I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
But you can find out, because I will be in Dublin at least for one time this year.
Yeah.
And I usually pay, of course, for public transport. Don't want to be a free rider, but it's an interesting question.
And thank you for the braille.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's
Where did you get your braille?
Oh yeah, that
my university thinks that it's a good idea, but the other card has QR code
directly. Yeah.
Okay.
You can scan it with your mobile phone.
Oh, there was
the back of the
there is. Okay.
From the organization.
Part of the braille. I have to say, I look so.
Hello.
Your card for you.
There's a question in the
university has a provider, of course.
Sorry, just before we close, there's a question in the chat. So over to you. And if you can introduce yourself first, please.
Hello. I was asking that if I can attend to this summer school in Maribor. I have just graduated from university. I don't have student status right now. Can I attend or apply?
On the summer, this is regarding the summer school, yes?
Yes.
Do you want to? Yes. If you go to the website, which again is epts.eu. So echo.
Yes, I have it.
You have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you register on that, I'm just waiting for Emer to get back to a speaker to comment on that. Just hold one moment.
Okay.
Can you
Could you just repeat your question? I was not listening. I'm sorry.
Yes, my question is that I have just graduated from university. I don't have a university status right now. Can I attend to this summer school?
I think you have to be enrolled into any degree program. So if there is a chance that you enroll in a degree program for the summer term, then I think you're entitled. So there's no restrictions in terms of topics, which courses you take or which degree program you follow. There's no restriction with respect to this. But I think you have to be enrolled. So you can, if you pay it on your own, you can take part. If I think anyway, but you have to contact University of Maribor. If you go to the website I mentioned, then you will find a link there, and all the information is given, and then you can proceed on this and contact them directly.
Okay, thank you.
So the website is repeated once again: E like echo, P T S.eu.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for staying online. So we have now officially closed the session at 1 minute to 12. Jose, you'll be happy, yeah?